up, guys? Welcome to another video. So today we've got a comparison video for you guys, because I know every time I put out a comparison video, those tend to get the most comments and the most views because they tend to generate more discussion. So today we're here with David, and this is his 2006 BMW M3 with the ZCP performance package. He also has a 2010 Mitsubishi Evolution 10 MR. So we're going to take a look at both of these cars, since if you really think about where these cars sit on the market today, you can probably pick up a low mileage version of these M3s for roughly the same price as early model Evo 10, probably in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. And we're going to drive them back to back and really compare and contrast. So tell me about your E46.
Yeah, so 2006 M3 I bought about a year and a half ago from a dealership in Sacramento. I actually been a big fan for E46 chassis. This is the last year of the E46. I had a 330 for about 15 years. Out for college, really liked the styling. When I was looking to upgrade my car, looked at the E90s and the F30s, the new generations. Actually didn't like them because they're bulky, technology heavy. The feel on the drive were a lot different and a lot more muted. And so actually I didn't want to spend the whole $50,000 on a new car anyways.
Yeah.
But being the price point, what I was looking for, I found this one, really good price. Mainly because it was higher mileage and came with an SMG, which is not usually very highly demanded by people. But checked out, great condition otherwise, and yeah, bought it a year and a half ago, so really enjoyed it since. I use it for pretty much daily driving when I do drive to work, and good for meeting clients and whatnot, because I obviously can't take the Evo when I do that. So.
That has too much of a boy racer stigma to it,
right.
Whereas this one's got the German luxury cars.
That's right.
It does have the SMG2 transmission, which is the first sequential single clutch automated manual transmission that I've ever used, and so it'll take some getting used to. So a lot of people think this is the best generation of M3. It still has the 3.2 liter, what is it, the S54?
S54.
So 3.2 liter inline six, dual overhead cam. It's got variable valve timing, revs all the way up to over 8,000 RPMs. So, and it makes over 100 horsepower per liter. It'll be interesting to take this for a drive and see how it does compared to the Evo, and then also comment on how it compares to the NSX. So let's take it for a drive. Alright, so first impressions driving the E46 M3. The steering's very, very light. Is this a hydraulically assisted rack?
I believe so.
Okay, it's not electric, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because it feels very much connected to the road. It's not so much that you feel every bump. It doesn't transmit any kind of harshness into the wheel, but you can still feel when you go over different cambers and grooves in the road, you can feel the wheel kind of pull to one side. So this car's pretty much bone stock, right?
Yep.
So intake, no intake or exhaust or anything?
K&N drop-in filter.
Oh, okay, just a filter.
Yeah.
So it's a lot quieter than I was expecting. I think that's just because I have a preconception of what E46 M3s are like from seeing them at the track and on the autocross. I mean, they all have aftermarket exhaust, probably straight piped. They do sound a little too raspy from outside. But this one in particular, you don't really get that much exhaust note. It has a very induction kind of metallic sound to it when you're in the car, and even outside the car. You don't get that much raspy exhaust note. The ride is pretty compliant. You do still feel a lot of bumps, but it is still a lot more comfortable than any car that I've driven that has been equipped with coilovers, even if they're just mild street coilovers. For street use, if you're driving this car more than 50% of the time or so on the street, I would say just leave the stock suspension. I think it doesn't really have that much body roll to begin with, so I think coilovers, unless you're a really hardcore track guy, would be unnecessary, at least for canyon driving. So on paper, this car makes 333 horsepower, right, and 262 foot-pounds.
Right.
It makes peak power all the way up at almost 8,000 RPM, so you really you have to wind the engine out to get the most out of it. That's not to say it doesn't feel torquey at low revs. It obviously, being a 6-cylinder, you know, it's still got decent torque. It doesn't feel like you're driving, you know, a VTEC 4-cylinder. And this car weighs around, I think, 3,400 pounds.
Maybe a little 35, yeah.
Okay, so more with the SMG, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So by today's standards, that's relatively light for a sports sedan. You've got, like you said, adjustable power seats. You've got AC. You've got a nav system. It's pretty well appointed in here, so 3,500 pounds really isn't too bad. So this car being a ZCP package, can you tell me what all goes into that?
Yeah. ZCP is a internal manufacturing code for competition package, and so it basically elevates the base platform with bigger cross drilled brakes, Brembo brakes. You got a Alcantara steering wheel. You have shorter steering rack, so I think it runs a 13.5 versus a 14.2 on stock. So
Is it the CSL steering rack?
It is a steering rack.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you know the MSRP of this car when it was brand new, by any chance?
It is about 55 without the package. So with the package, add another $4,100.
Only $4,000 for that package?
Yeah.
Seems like a fairly good deal.
Yeah, it's actually a really good deal.
Well, let's push this car a little harder and see how it really does. And let's move this over.
Actually, I'm going to tell you something else. You push the support button right there.
Support button. Okay.
Their responsiveness should be much greater.
Steering and throttle?
Throttle and steering. Yeah.
Okay. Let's give it a shot.
Tell the difference.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't tell you earlier, so you can compare.
Ooh. I just kept it in second and it did a little back and forth. Is that normal?
It happens once in a while, but I haven't seen that too much.
So one thing with this SMG transmission is that in order to make it shift smoothly, you can't just go flat to the floor and shift up and expect it to not buck you. You really got to lift your foot off the throttle between shifts. I'm just giving it, if I give it a little bit of gas while I'm midway through the RPMs in second gear, it does that. That's really weird. Yeah, see, when you lift your foot between shifts, it really smooths out the gear change. Downshifts are pretty good. They seem like they're rev matched, are they?
It might be. Actually, they might have the CSL SMG tune on there.
Okay.
So it might do the blipping for you.
It's not particularly fast, especially compared to like a modern dual clutch, but it's still like, you can tell, you know, they put some work into getting the downshift right. I gotta say, if this car had a manual transmission, oh my god, it would be something else. Because everything about, okay, so, sorry, I just kind of got lost in my driving for a bit. Everything about the car, the chassis, the suspension, the brakes, of course the engine, that's a given. The steering, everything feels great. It's just the transmission that lets me down, because it gives me shifts every time I pull a paddle. That's not the issue. And actually in manual mode, it'll hold the gear as long as you want. It's not gonna, even if you, let's say you're in manual mode and you shift it up to like 4th gear, even though you're doing like 30 miles an hour, if you put your foot to the floor, it will not downshift for you, and I love that. It does give you full control. It's just, the upshifts are so unnatural. It just feels wrong to have to lift your foot off the throttle between shifts when you're shifting up. I mean, I know that's what you do in a manual car, but this is not a manual car, right? I want to be able to just go flat out. And yes, you can do that, but it responds with like a big kind of bucking motion. The balance of this car for a 3,500 pound car feels pretty incredible. I can't tell it weighs that much when I really start pushing it. Really, it does feel more like a 3,200 pound car in my opinion. And for stock brakes, these are fantastic. It's not that they have crazy stopping power. In fact, they're not even that sensitive when you first start biting into the pedal, but they just give you such a progressive feel throughout the pedal travel that you can really modulate it, and actually you can use the brakes to help turn the car when you're braking into a corner. All right.
Love that noise.
I feel like, I know this probably wouldn't be possible, but like this engine in the original NSX would be perfect, because I mean the NSX engine is a sweetheart. I love it. I just wish it had about another 50 to 60 horsepower, and this is exactly what this has.
So it was fun, actually really good in the track. Took it on the full 5-mile course last year. The only problem is that it tends to overheat. So by the fourth session in the 90-degree weather, 99, 95, it started to pull a little more of the high temp on my coolant. So
is that a known issue with the E46 M3?
it is. I think due to the undersized air cooler radiator up front. So a lot of people upgraded to the Mission motors or something.
Okay.
I think two other big issues I think you pointed out was the SMG. I think it's the clunkiness and the reliability becomes an issue. So a lot of people have to replace their pumps after so many miles.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I've heard a lot of people actually have SMG pumps sitting on the sideline, so they can just swap it out when they do have problems.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're like $3,000 a pop.
Ooh.
So my mechanic basically said, hey, if it ever happens, goes out, then you should just convert to a manual. So that might be an option.
That makes sense. Yeah, that would make this car pretty much perfect, I think.
Right.
So do you have any future plans with this car? I mean, actually, first of all, is this even like your daily driver, or?
It is when I do drive to work. Usually I take the train now, but when I do go to some places, I just drive this car.
Okay.
So it's a good place, just good car to just take around, see people, and be presentable.
Yeah.
But I think for the future, it'd probably be very subtle. I don't want to make. I was thinking about the CSL trunk and the diffuser, but
yeah,
maybe a little too much. So if I could afford it, would be the CSL intake that goes in front. That noise is phenomenal. So
yeah, I do think this car could use a little bit more induction noise.
Yeah.
Even at full throttle, it sounds good, but you really have to go really full throttle to get any kind of sound out of it. So how's the reliability on this car? I know you got it not that long ago, but has it held up pretty well besides the temperatures?
Overall, yes. I just had to do the suspension refresh, the Guibo change. The slave cylinder went out maybe like 6 months into it. But so far, so good. The subframe's still pretty strong. I don't know if you know, the E46s have a big subframe problem where they sort of tear.
Oh, I knew that was a problem with the Z3Ms too. But
yeah.
I didn't know that was an issue with this car.
Yeah, for sure.
So basically this car, when it works, it's great. When it doesn't, but it does have some pretty major known issues that could happen.
Yeah. It's not like a Honda for sure.
Yeah. I've had just no issues with any of my Hondas.
Yeah. So I think the general sentiment is if you decide to buy a car like this, then just prepare to have at least a couple of thousand in the bank in case something goes wrong.
Yeah. No, I was actually thinking about one of these with a stick before I got my NSX. I didn't even go check out any of them, but just on paper it seemed like if the car was relatively reliable, on paper it's got everything I want. It's got the high revving engine, it's got good power to weight ratio, it's rear wheel drive, it looks great. But after I did a little bit of digging on the internet, the general consensus is the reliability is just going to bite you in the ass one day, sooner or later. So that's one reason why I stuck to a Japanese car. But at the same time, like the driving, just the pure driving experience of this car when it does work is just on point. So all right, so yeah, that was a great experience. Thanks for letting me drive this car. I guess it's now it's time to head over to the Evo 10. Mm-hmm. To be honest, going into this comparison, I had a feeling this car would win. So I'm hoping that thing has a few tricks up its sleeve.